There is a moment that feels subtle at first, almost easy to dismiss, when you begin to sense that something has shifted. Conversations feel tighter. Words that once passed without consequence now seem to linger in the air, as if they are being weighed, dissected, and stored. You notice pauses that weren't there before, glances that feel evaluative instead of neutral, questions that sound innocent on the surface but land with a sharp edge. This is often the first sign that the narcissist has realized you are no longer buying the story they are selling. When a narcissist knows you're onto them, the dynamic changes instantly, even if nothing obvious has happened yet. You may not have confronted them. You may not have accused them. You may not have said anything at all. But something in your energy, your boundaries, or your refusal to react the way you used to has alerted them. And once that awareness clicks into place, everything becomes more dangerous. What many people don't understand is that narcissists are not threatened by conflict. They are threatened by exposure. As long as you are confused, self-doubting, or still trying to understand them, they feel safe. The moment you begin to see patterns instead of isolated incidents, the moment you stop explaining their behavior away, you move from being useful to being a liability. And narcissists do not tolerate liabilities. One of the most unsettling experiences people describe is walking into a room and feeling the atmosphere drop. Conversations stop mid-sentence. People avoid eye contact. There is an unspoken tension that wasn't there before, and somehow you can feel that you are at the center of it. No one explains what's wrong. No one accuses you directly. Yet the message is clear. You are now the problem. This is not accidental, it is coordinated. When a grandiose narcissist realizes you see through them, their first instinct is to destabilize you. They need to shake your confidence before you can articulate what you've noticed. Often, this begins with withdrawal. The warmth disappears. Communication becomes clipped or non-existent. You are met with silence where there was once engagement. This silence is not peaceful. It is strategic. It is designed to make you question yourself, to create anxiety, to pull you back into seeking their approval. But silence is only the opening move. Once they have an opportunity, they escalate quickly. Gaslighting becomes more aggressive, more blatant, and far less subtle than before. The narcissist is no longer content with small distortions. They begin rewriting entire events. They accuse you of things that make no sense. They speak with absolute certainty, as if their version of reality is already widely accepted. They don't say, "That's not how I remember it." They say, "That never happened. You're imagining things." And then, with chilling confidence, they add, "Everyone knows this about you." This is where many empathetic people get trapped. Because if you are someone who tries to understand others, you may assume there must be a misunderstanding. You may tell yourself they're under stress, overwhelmed, insecure, or dealing with something personal. You may search for a rational explanation that allows you to preserve the image you had of them. In doing so, you miss the most important truth. This is not confusion. This is a threat. When narcissistic gaslighting becomes extreme, it is no longer about controlling the narrative quietly. It is about testing compliance. The unspoken message is simple. Fall back in line, or we will make your life unbearable. The narcissist wants to know whether you will submit or resist. If you resist, they are prepared to punish you. I learned this lesson in a way that still feels surreal when I look back on it. At my own wedding, a moment that should have been defined by joy and connection, the first clear sign appeared. A woman I had long assumed was simply controlling and emotionally needy suddenly turned on me with shocking intensity. She accused me of ruining the entire event. She claimed everyone was upset. She insisted that I owed her an apology, not privately, but publicly. The accusation was so disconnected from reality that it was disorienting. It didn't align with anything that had actually happened. I remember standing there, mentally replaying the day, trying to figure out what I had missed. I hadn't yet understood narcissism at that point, so I did what many people do. I tried to make sense of it. I assumed there had to be some emotional explanation. I thought perhaps she felt overlooked or overwhelmed. That assumption was a mistake. What I didn't realize was that this accusation was not about the wedding at all. It was a declaration of power. It was the opening salvo in a much larger campaign. And because I didn't recognize it for what it was, I wasn't prepared for how quickly it would escalate. When a narcissist knows you're on to them, they stop waiting for proof. They don't need evidence to accuse you. They create their own. If there is nothing real to use against you, they invent something. And they deliver it with such conviction that you are left scrambling to defend yourself against a reality that never existed. This is why one of the most critical skills you can develop at this stage is restraint. When you realize the narcissist is watching you closely, collecting information, and preparing to strike, your instinct may be to explain yourself, to clarify, to correct the record, to prove that you are reasonable and fair. Unfortunately, this instinct works against you. Every explanation becomes raw material. Every emotional reaction becomes proof, in their narrative, that you are unstable, dramatic, or guilty. At this point, you must assume that nothing you say is private, and no one within their circle is neutral. This is where strategic silence becomes essential. Silence does not mean passivity. It means refusing to give them leverage. When confronted, your goal is not to convince. It is to disengage. Short, non-committal responses protect you from being drawn into circular arguments designed to exhaust and confuse you. Phrases like, "I understand that's how you see it," or "I hear you," end conversations without feeding them. Equally important is learning to end discussions altogether. You are allowed to say, "I'm not going to talk about this," or "This conversation isn't productive." You are allowed to walk away, physically or emotionally. Doing so sends a signal that you are no longer available for manipulation, even if they don't acknowledge it openly. If silence and gaslighting fail to bring you back into submission, the narcissist moves to the next phase: isolation through reputation destruction. This is often the most painful part, especially for people who value honesty and connection. Suddenly, friends grow distant. Family members stop returning calls. Colleagues become cold or suspicious. You may not even know what has been said about you, only that something has changed. This is the smear campaign. The narcissist begins spreading stories designed to undermine your credibility. Sometimes the lies are dramatic: accusations of theft, infidelity, sabotage, or betrayal. Other times they are subtle character attacks, painting you as unstable, unreliable, or emotionally volatile. The goal is not just to make people doubt you. It is to make them afraid of aligning with you. What makes this tactic so effective is speed. Narcissists move fast. By the time you realize what is happening, the story has already been repeated, reinforced, and accepted as truth by people you once trusted. If you try to defend yourself after the fact, you often appear reactive, which only strengthens the false narrative. This, too, happened to me. One day we were surrounded by family, celebrating. The next day, it felt as though a script had been distributed overnight. The same phrases were repeated, word for word, by different people. Some confronted us directly. Others withdrew completely, offering nothing but silence. The message was unmistakable: comply or lose access to the family entirely. This is the moment when many people break, and understandably so. If you are empathetic, your instinct may be to clear your name, to sit everyone down, to explain your side calmly and logically. But logic does not dismantle a smear campaign. In many cases, it fuels it. The narcissist has already framed your attempt to defend yourself as evidence of guilt. The most effective response is counterintuitive. You deprive the fire of oxygen. Fire needs fuel, and in this context, fuel is emotional reaction. It is visible distress, frantic explanations, public confrontations, or attempts to recruit allies. When you remain calm, neutral, and disengaged, the narrative loses momentum. Neutral responses like, "I see," or "That's interesting," offer nothing for the narcissist to twist. Quietly removing yourself from conversations that feel hostile protects your nervous system and denies them satisfaction. At the same time, silence does not mean inaction. This is when documentation matters. Notes, timelines, messages, witnesses. This is when you consider professional support if the situation threatens your livelihood or safety. Protecting yourself is not dramatic. It is necessary. There is a reason this stage feels so unsettling. On a biological level, your body recognizes danger. It is the same heightened awareness you feel walking alone through a dark parking garage, every sense alert. That fear is not weakness. It is information. And when the narcissist realizes fear is working, they escalate again. Threats may become explicit. Careers are targeted. False allegations are hinted at or openly stated. Some narcissists resort to intimidation, showing up uninvited, violating boundaries, or leveraging authority figures against you. Others manipulate legal systems, workplaces, or social networks to corner you. If you are a compassionate person, this level of hostility can be hard to process. You may struggle to believe someone would deliberately try to destroy you. That disbelief is one of the narcissist's greatest advantages. For those with prior trauma, this escalation can trigger profound fear responses. I know that for me, overt aggression shuts my body down. I don't feel powerful. I feel small, frozen, like a child bracing for impact. And while that paralysis can feel humiliating, I've learned to see it differently. It is my system telling me this is serious, that I need support, not stoicism. This is where protection becomes collective. Trusted friends, legal advice, therapeutic support, partners who understand the reality of the threat. No one should face this stage alone. Fear becomes dangerous only when it immobilizes you. When you channel it into action, it becomes protective. Identify exactly what is being threatened. Your job, your children, your finances, your safety. Specificity transforms anxiety into strategy. And this is where the story continues. Because when intimidation fails, narcissists reveal even more about themselves. When the narcissist realizes that fear alone is no longer enough to control you, something shifts inside them. At this stage, their behavior becomes less calculated and more desperate. The mask begins to slip, not because they want it to, but because maintaining the facade requires too much energy when you're no longer responding the way they expect. What you're witnessing now is not confidence. It is panic disguised as authority. A narcissist who knows you're onto them is not trying to win you back. They are trying to neutralize you. And if intimidation, gaslighting, and isolation haven't forced your compliance, they will begin to reveal how far they're willing to go to preserve their sense of dominance. This is the phase where many people finally see the narcissist clearly, not because the narcissist explains themselves, but because their actions become impossible to rationalize. This is also the phase where the narcissist often makes mistakes. They may contradict themselves openly. They may escalate too fast, exposing the pattern to people who were previously unaware. They may become so aggressive that even those who once supported them begin to feel uneasy. But this does not mean the danger has passed. In fact, this is often when things feel the most volatile. One of the most important things to understand is that narcissists do not experience shame the way emotionally healthy people do. Exposure does not lead to remorse. It leads to retaliation. If they sense they are losing control of the narrative, they may attempt one final, dramatic move designed to either force submission or provoke you into a reaction that confirms their story. This is why restraint continues to matter, even when you feel justified in speaking out. There is a temptation, once you fully understand what you're dealing with, to finally tell your truth, to lay everything out, to confront them publicly or expose them to everyone at once. While there are situations where speaking up is necessary, doing so impulsively can backfire. Narcissists thrive on chaos. They are most effective when emotions are high and lines are blurred. The goal is not to prove who they are. The goal is to protect who you are. Over time, one of the most painful realizations is accepting that some people will never hear your side. Not because you failed to explain, but because they have already chosen a version of reality that feels safer or more convenient for them. Letting go of the need to be believed by everyone is one of the hardest but most liberating steps in this process. What replaces that need is discernment. You begin to notice who asks questions instead of making accusations, who listens without trying to fix or judge, who respects your boundaries even when they don't fully understand your experience. These are the people worth keeping close. Everyone else fades into the background, not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. As distance grows between you and the narcissist, they may attempt hoovering tactics, sudden shifts into charm, apologies that feel hollow, or manufactured crises designed to pull you back in. These moments can be confusing, especially if you remember times when they seemed caring or supportive. It's important to remember that these behaviors are not signs of growth. They are strategies. True accountability does not arrive wrapped in urgency or guilt. It arrives quietly, consistently, and without pressure. Narcissists rarely offer that. There is also grief in this stage. Grief for the relationship you thought you had. Grief for the version of yourself who kept trying to make things work. Grief for the time and energy spent doubting your own perceptions. This grief is not weakness. It is evidence that you are capable of attachment, empathy, and hope. What changes is where you direct those qualities. Instead of pouring them into someone who exploits them, you begin to invest them in your own stability. Your routines become anchors. Your boundaries become non-negotiable. You stop explaining your decisions to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Slowly, your nervous system begins to recalibrate. Safety starts to feel possible again. This doesn't mean the fear disappears overnight. Even long after the narcissist is out of your life, certain situations may trigger a sense of hypervigilance. A raised voice, a sudden accusation, a shift in tone. These reactions are not signs that you are broken. They are learned responses from a system that adapted to survive. Healing is not about erasing these responses. It's about learning how to soothe them. For me, that meant recognizing that my paralysis was not cowardice. It was a freeze response shaped by years of emotional unpredictability. When I stopped shaming myself for it, I could finally work with it. I learned to pause, to ground myself, to reach out instead of retreating into silence. Building a support system became essential. Not a large one, but a reliable one. People who understood the dynamics of narcissistic abuse. Professionals who validated my experience without sensationalizing it. Loved ones who didn't need every detail to believe me. With time, the narcissist's presence began to shrink. Their voice lost its authority. Their threats felt less personal and more predictable. What once felt all-consuming became something I could observe from a distance. This is one of the most empowering realizations. Narcissists are not omnipotent. They rely on secrecy, confusion, and emotional reactions. When those are removed, their influence weakens. That doesn't mean they disappear quietly. Some narcissists continue to orbit, testing boundaries, waiting for moments of vulnerability. This is why consistency matters more than confrontation. Every time you respond the same way, calm, brief, disengaged, you reinforce a reality they cannot control. Eventually, something remarkable happens. You stop thinking about them as much. Your life fills with things that have nothing to do with managing someone else's emotions. Your energy returns to you, and with it comes clarity. You begin to trust your instincts again. You remember that the unease you felt early on was not paranoia. It was perception. That subtle sense of being watched, evaluated, and managed was your intuition recognizing a threat long before your mind caught up. Learning to honor that intuition is one of the most lasting gifts to come out of this experience. When you look back, you may see the pattern clearly. The charm, the control, the punishment, the escalation. But you will also see something else. You survived it. You adapted. You learned. And you walked away with a deeper understanding of power, boundaries, and self-worth. A narcissist knowing you're onto them is dangerous, yes, but it is also the beginning of the end of their hold over you. Because once you see the game, you can no longer be played in the same way. And while they may continue trying to rewrite the story, the truth lives quietly inside you now, steady and unshakable. That is where your real power is.